Virginia. And Bill, before we get into what we're going to talk about now, and that is Colin Powell, I want to actually play for our viewers what Colin Powell said today. The big news, as our viewers I'm sure know at this point, is that Colin Powell decided to break his silence 2 weeks before Election Day. And yes, the Republican decided to go ahead and endorse, not the Republican speaking behind me, John McCain, his friend of 25 years, but Barack Obama. Listen to what Colin Powell said.
I think that Senator Obama brings a fresh set of eyes, fresh set of ideas to the table. I think that Senator McCain, as gifted as he is essentially going to execute the Republican agenda, the orthodoxy of the Republican agenda, with a new face and with a maverick approach to it. And he'd be quite good at it. But I think we need more than that. I think we need a generational change. And I think Senator Obama has captured the feelings of the young people of America and is reaching out in a more diverse, inclusive way across our society.
Could you talk to us about when your decision was made final? When did you finally set your heart on Senator Obama?
I have been watching, as I said in there, for a long time. And then within the past couple of months, I really said, you know, you just can't keep watching. You got to kind of settle down. And frankly, it was in the period leading up to the conventions and then the decisions that came out of the conventions, and then just sort of watching the responses of the two individuals on the economic crisis gives me an opportunity to evaluate their judgment, to evaluate their way of approaching a problem, to evaluate the steadiness of their actions. And it was at that point that I realized that, in my mind anyway, that Senator Obama has demonstrated the kind of calm, patient, intellectual, steady approach to problem solving that I think we need in this country. We have two wars. We have economic problems. We have health problems. We have education problems. We have infrastructure problems. We have problems around the world with our allies. And so those are the problems the American people wanted to hear about, not about Mr. Ayers, not about who's a Muslim and who's not a Muslim. Those kinds of images going out in Al-Jazeera are killing us around the world. And we have got to say to the world, doesn't make any difference who you are or what you are. If you're an American, you're an American. And this business of, for example, a congressman from Minnesota who's going around saying, let's examine all congressmen to see who is pro-America or not pro-America. We have got to stop this kind of nonsense, pull ourselves together, and remember that our great strength is in our unity and in our diversity. And so that really was driving me. And to focus on people like Mr. Ayers, these trivial issues, for the purpose of suggesting that somehow Mr. Obama would have some kind of terrorist inclinations, I thought that was over the top. That was beyond just good political fighting back and forth. I think it went beyond. And then to sort of throw in this little Muslim connection, you know, he's a Muslim and, my gosh, he's a terrorist. And it was taking root. And we can't judge our people, and we can't hold our elections on that kind of basis. And so, yes, that kind of negativity troubled me. And the constant shifting of the argument. I was troubled a couple of weeks ago when, in the middle of the crisis, the campaign said, we're going to go negative, and they announced it. We're going to go negative and attack his character through Bill Ayers. And now, I guess, the message this week is we're going to call him a socialist. Mr. Obama is now a socialist because he dares to suggest that maybe we ought to look at the tax structure that we have. Taxes are always a redistribution of money. Most of the taxes that are redistributed go back to those who pay them in roads and airports and hospitals and schools. And taxes are necessary for the common good. And there's nothing wrong with examining what our tax structure is, or who should be paying more, who should be paying less. And for us to say that that makes you a socialist, I think is an unfortunate characterization that isn't accurate. And I don't want my taxes raised. I don't want anybody else's taxes raised. But I also want to see our infrastructure fixed. I don't want to have a $12 trillion national debt. And I don't want to see an annual deficit that's over $500 billion heading toward $1 trillion. So how do we deal with all of this?
That is Colin Powell speaking this morning in Washington, explaining why he decided to go ahead and endorse Barack Obama. Again, not the man who he has been friends with for a quarter century, the man speaking speaking behind me, John McCain. And Bill, I want to ask you specifically about not just the fact that he endorsed Obama, but the fact that he really had some searing criticism of John McCain. Just there, you heard Colin Powell say that he doesn't think that McCain's argument against Obama as a quote-unquote socialist, the fact that he's seizing on this spreading the wealth comment, which is what McCain is talking about right behind me, that really has any place here. Not just that, he said he was very upset about the fact that McCain has seized on William Ayers and other things. How much of an impact do you think this endorsement is going to have on Barack Obama, or maybe the other way to look at it is how much of a negative is it going to be for John McCain?
Well, it certainly was a double-barreled statement, because he not only praised Barack Obama, but he criticized the negative campaign being run by John McCain. You know, all this year, there's been one weakness in the Barack Obama resume and in his campaign, and that is, and the voters say this in the polls, he doesn't have any military experience. People wonder, can he be an effective commander-in-chief? He's fairly young, not terribly experienced in world affairs, and that gives some people hesitation about voting for Barack Obama. Well, this endorsement, full-throated as it was, from Colin Powell says, I want to reassure you, I think he's ready to be president. I think he's prepared. He also mentioned in his statement that it would help improve relations with the rest of the world. They take another look at their relations with the United States, and it was extremely reassuring for this experienced military leader, a general, someone who was chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who was Secretary of State, to endorse Barack Obama and say his world experience, his commitment and knowledge of national security are fine. You can vote for him without those kinds of reservations.
No question. I mean, he really did seem to try to undermine some of McCain's central arguments against Barack Obama, like you were just talking about, particularly the whole idea that Obama just doesn't have the experience to be commander-in-chief. But I also want to ask you about, Colin Powell himself, Bill. The fact of the matter is that he doesn't have exactly a clean slate with regard to some of the hot-button issues, particularly the war in Iraq. I mean, his armor is a little bit tarnished for the fact that he was a lead spokesman and an advocate for the war in Iraq. Obviously, famously, or maybe now infamously, went in front of the United Nations and argued for war. So how much of an impact is Powell going to have, particularly on Democrats and independents who might look at that and say, well, he's not exactly, somebody who doesn't have problems of his own, at least recently, on the issue that had been the dominant issue in terms of foreign policy in this election?
Well, I think that argument might hold sway with some Democrats and liberals who continue to resent and certainly remember Colin Powell's role in selling Bush's war in Iraq at the United Nations, and they continue to resent that. But look, they're already with Barack Obama. And the fact that Powell has given such a strong endorsement of Obama may mean that they're willing to set those reservations aside and not talk about them for the time being. Powell's message was not targeted at Democrats and liberals. They're already on board. It was targeted at some people who are reluctant to support Obama because they worry about his military qualifications, his foreign policy qualifications, people who may have been supportive of the war in Iraq or weren't angry about it the way many Democrats and liberals were. Many of them oppose the war, but they probably see Colin Powell as something of a reluctant warrior, although how much he was reluctant, the historians will have to sort out. But the Powell statement was targeted at a far larger audience.
It absolutely was, Bill, and we should say that John McCain himself said this morning that he clearly seemed to be disappointed, although he tried to kind of downplay this announcement by his old friend Colin Powell, and said that he has been endorsed by other secretaries of state, and just said that the two men clearly are going to agree to disagree. As you can imagine, though, Barack Obama had quite a different reaction. In fact, he spoke about this endorsement that he got this morning out on the campaign trail in the red state of North Carolina. We're going to bring that to you right after the break. Stay with us.